Hi, I'm Amy Shannon from Amy's Bookshelf Reviews
Good evening,
podcast, where
listeners. I'm
stories
Amy
speak,
Shannon, and
voices
welcome to
matter,
Amy's
and words
Bookshelf
come
Reviews
alive. If
podcast
you are
conversations,
following
revelations,
this
and
on
inspirations behind the
Spotify,
books. You never know where the
please
conversation will lead us, so
follow
let's
the
find out.
podcast.
Tonight we have a guest with
Um,
us. Thank you for joining us. Will
Now,
you please
the
introduce yourself
interviewees
and let people
uh,
know how they can
have
connect
the
with you?
option of having an
Hi, Amy.
audio-only
My name is Martin
podcast
Bodek, and
session
it's
or
an
video
absolute
podcast
pleasure to
session.
be here.
This is
Thank you
a
very much for
video
having me on your
podcast
podcast.
session, and
This
I
is
hope that
the
you
book
enjoy it.
that I find
It will
myself
also
frequently talking
be
about and
shown on
podcasting about and
YouTube.
so forth.
So
It's
if
Saidi's
you
War.
are
It's the story
watching
of
this
my
on YouTube,
grandfather's unreal
please subscribe.
World
Thank you.
War II survival story. People can find me at martinbodekbooks.com. Everything else that I've ever done is warehoused there very nicely, and I'd love for people to check it out at their leisure.
Great, and I'll have that link in the description of this episode when it goes live. So, what made you? I've read the book, but and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know how long ago it was. So, but what gave you the inspiration to write your grandfather's story?
It was my grandfather's story itself.
Oh,
So I really think that my grandfather's story was the first kickoff or impetus to my writing career. I've written 13 books, 14th, 15th, and 16th are upcoming. I'm a busy, busy guy. Again, check it all out on martinbodekbooks.com. I'm extremely busy. But this was the first. This was when I listened to my grandfather at a time when I was probably illegally young to listen to such insane survival stories. I thought to myself, I think as a 6 or 7 year old, I have got to tell the story. What my grandfather's telling me is just absurd and amazing. And it doesn't sound like the other stories that I'm hearing from other grandparents of my friends. They all sound like usual, archetypical Auschwitz survivor stories. This is completely different. So a seed was planted at a very young age. And many, many years later, I suppose it was 3 decades later, finally churned this out. And it was a long time coming, but it was going to happen eventually.
that was yeah, it was an amazing book, and I when you said that it was different from other children's, their grandparents' Auschwitz stories, how do you think it was different?
Well, the usual story that you hear, that one hears,
Yeah,
is I was living my life in Poland or Germany or Lithuania
right.
or Russia, and then all of a sudden we were stuffed into the ghetto, and then we were shipped off on the trains to Auschwitz, and then it was hell on earth, and we survived, and that's how I'm here.
Wow.
So
So
that's
basically, the
your
in between stuff that we know happened there, you stay, you go, and either one could be a death sentence. And you
yes,
didn't know it. So yeah, the, I guess that the grandparents would want to shield children from those
yes,
kind of stories, but I, as they got older, I mean, there's not too many survivors, if hardly any survivors anymore. I mean, their families, yes, but um, I think I like the way you put your story together. You told it, your grandfather sounds like he was an amazing man, and he probably just wanted, he didn't want to sugarcoat it for you. He wanted to tell you what really happened, and he must have had that confidence in you to know that you could handle it.
yeah. So just to go back a few steps, so the story that I described is the typical thing that you ever hear,
Right.
and my grandfather's story is obviously not. It
Yeah.
goes completely around Auschwitz, like around. Like there are other people in the story
Right.
that are characters that are my family, my larger family that were subject to Auschwitz and were murdered there, and some survived there. But my grandfather went around the entire thing. The fact that he served 4 armies is something that got every publisher's attention when I was submitting the book
Mhm.
with my query letter. So that's how it's different. As for the fact that my grandfather was telling me this, I don't necessarily know if it was trust or he was just being a little reckless and careless. And that's fine too, if that was the
Yeah,
case.
tell me a story.
I don't think he was like, he looked at me and said, this kid can take, no, I don't think he did that calculation. He was just, hey, this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he thought you need to learn lessons from this or you need to grow from this. It was just grandpa storytelling. And that's just how we unloaded. So I felt lucky, right? Because there are many people who have grandparents, and you never know who survived World War II, and you
Right.
never know if they're going to talk about it, or if they'll clam up, if they'll pass their trauma on to their kids, if the grandkids will get tertiary trauma, right?
Yeah.
You don't know until
Right.
you grow up and you realize either, okay, this guy is like talking about the war all the time and enough already, or the opposite, grandma's never going to say anything and we need to have the story.
Yeah.
So I was the lucky one. So, in order to write a book like this, you need two things to happen. You need somebody who's chatty, who's willing to talk, and you need somebody who likes to listen.
Yeah.
Right? That's always the combination of every single book that's ever been published about a real life event.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Somebody's
true.
got to talk and somebody's got to listen.
Yeah.
History itself could talk if it knows, right? But when it
Right.
comes to humans passing along information, they have to talk. The writer needs to listen. So we had that perfect combination here. His wife, my grandmother, was also she didn't hide too much, but her story, as we alluded to before, was a usual Auschwitz survival story, and I could not fill a book with that information. I
Yeah.
did include at the end of the book a tribute to my grandmother and wrote her full story. It takes up about 10 pages because that's how the size of her story.
Right.
But my grandfather's story is obviously outsized and just huge and wide ranging, and somebody has to help me figure out how to make it a movie, because when you serve four armies, that is the hook in and of itself.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's a famous documentary written about a Thai fellow who found himself in the service of Russia and then France, and then the English picked him up. So there's been documentaries about the fact that he served three armies, and I'm
Right.
like, well, I got one better. I got one more. Where are you
So
people?
filmmakers, if you're listening.
Yeah, four armies. When you speak in front of a crowd, they say the best thing to do is to set a question in front of the crowd that you know they're going to want to hear an answer to, and then take the hour to unpack it.
Right.
So when I do this, I say, how does a man get to serve four armies in 6 years? Then I divert and I did some introductory information and some fun facts about myself, and then we get to answering that question.
That's cool. I mean, seriously, that is like, you have an opening that it's real,
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, let me come up with a tagline or something. This is what happened, this is what my grandfather did. And
Yeah.
so, and that is just, it's amazing. I see why that, but that's the one that, like, I know you've written a lot of books, but that's probably the one that you go back to a lot, and that, well, I believe that everybody should read that book. For one, I read it and I loved it, and I was also like, wow.
Yeah.
It was just like, I think of stories that on my family side that never got told. And because I had never, like, my father's father, he passed away before my parents met. He wasn't very talkative, but he served in World War, only one army though. And it wasn't until later I was dating this man who, his ex-father-in-law was this old man, and he still visited him. So I went and visited him, and when he found out my name, he asked me, he's like, is Frank your grandfather? And I said, yes. He
Uh-oh.
goes, no, he was my best friend.
Well then.
Yeah, they served together and they were best friends before and after. And he told me stories, and I was like, are you serious? He told me stuff about my grandmother that I didn't know either. And then he's like, I bet she's still a looker. And then when I told my grandmother about it, she's like, yep, I remember him. Just that's all she said. But it's like there are stories that go untold. So, and I think that sometimes, I mean, I'm a storyteller. I mean, I just go on and on and on, and my kids are like, "Mom, get to the point." I'm telling a story, and but then there are some that in some ways, it's kind of like a lost art, passing your stories down from one generation to the next. I mean, I'm sure my when I'm gone and my kids will be telling whoever, probably their pets, because all my grandchildren they have fur. So those are the stories they will tell them. But to have that, just to be able to be a kid and sit back, or adult, sit back and listen to stories from previous generations. And I just, I love it. I love family history. I love history in general, local history. And my dad's cousin, well, he's my cousin too, but we connected after my grandmother passed, and he had interviewed her about her life, and she passed when she was 101.
Ooh, wow.
She lived a full life. She had fallen. If she hadn't fallen, she might have lived a little bit longer. She was a very strong yet frail woman, and um, when she celebrated her 101st birthday, it was during COVID.
Oh,
So
boy.
my dad's two cousins, they wanted to go see her on her birthday, so they stood outside her bedroom window and talked to her. And later she's like, I don't know why they made such a big deal about it. So I'm only 101. And then I'm like, Graham, it just means you're historical. And she's like, oh, I like that. I had to explain why her nephews want to come and visit her because she turned 101. Thinking, if I turn 101, I'm going to like it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So obviously I like history too. And obviously I was an avid listener. And to go back to a point that you made just a few moments ago, I tell presenters when I'm presenting my book package to them and
Right.
the presentation services, if I was a one-note, monotone, boring speaker and I just read what I wrote blandly and coarsely, it still would be an incredible story.
Yeah.
But as you can tell, I have a lot of energy.
That's
So
great. That's what makes it. I
yeah,
mean,
so I do have this energy, and I think it comes across on the page. And actually, I took pains to make this cover. I've been told that when you touch it, you feel cold, which was my point. This is the Russian wilderness that my grandfather was caught in with Army Number 3.
oh,
So
yeah,
I tried to give the sense. So my own energy comes through in the book. I try to make it as sensational as I can, right? To it's not just two covers and pages in between. It's something you can feel
right.
when you pick it up.
And yeah, and I'm sure that, and I've got it too, was your energy, your passion for it, but also I could just feel the energy of your grandfather. It just how I don't. Sometimes things get lost in translation. Your grandfather tells you a story, and then you tell the same story, but something gets lost or changed, and I don't. And I don't feel like that was like missing, like there was anything that was told that wasn't, that got changed or anything. It just, I think it stuck with you, and and you honored your grandfather by sharing his story, and I think you are also honoring those other grandparents who only beat around the bush about what they went through, and many just didn't want to share trauma, or they didn't want to relive it. or they didn't want to explain how they may have had like siblings or aunts and uncles that they just never saw again, and um, they only guessed what happened. Some people don't know. So I think that this is truly, it's like, yes, somebody should make a documentary on this.
Yeah, I think so too.
Netflix, here you go, Netflix. You got the attention. But
um,
seriously, I mean, it's a magnificent story, and how you tell it with your voice and your grandfather's voice is pretty amazing. Not a lot of people can do that. And yes, you are very energetic, and that is what um, makes people want to listen to you.
I think so. I appreciate that. It certainly comes across. I can't mute this. I can't keep my arm still.
I get it.
uh, but my grandfather was very open, and so there's a lot of me in the telling of the story, in the linear retelling, and
Right.
I preserve my grandfather's personal energy at the appendix part of the book, where I transcribe the conversations that we had, and he comes through there. So I make sure in the construction of this book to preserve his self, his sense of energy and self, and I think it does come through. There's a bit of my mother was my research partner for this book. She helped me communicate with my grandfather. He used some phrasings that were unfamiliar to me, and he needed some coaxing to sit down with me. And she sat in on all the interviews that were put on VHS, which some people of a certain age might know, but some
Yeah,
people
Google
have
it, people, if you don't
no
know.
idea. Right. So you see the combativeness between my mom and my grandfather, which is extremely funny and endearing, and the publisher wanted to preserve that, so it's all in there, and the reader can see the wayward strains of thought that I had to corral and put together and set up in a line.
Yeah,
So just so your readers know, it's I start the story at point A and I finish it at point B. I didn't do the flashback business, which I find confusing,
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
because just jumping back and forth, it's like time traveling and you can't keep track of stuff. It's linear.
yeah.
It's simpler, and it's straightforward, and you can see a life progressing and survival commencing throughout the book, and it
And
was done on
also,
purpose.
yeah, and when you get to the end, you're like, well, I know I was like amazed, in awe, and thinking, God, I want to meet your grandfather. Well, that was just kind of, that's how I was feeling. It was like, it was just so, it was it's a powerful book, and the way that you put it together, I think for it just fit. Everything is like, I want to say perfect, because from the way you were saying about like putting it together, and how it's cold, and because the Russian winter and everything like that, because when we learn about World War II, or even World War I, or um, we hear like what's in our history book, or unless we actually know somebody who happened to be there or had a story from someone else. And um, I just, more people should think back and check those out, because I've seen a lot of movies that were based off of true stories. Hacksaw Ridge was one of
Yes.
I really enjoyed that one, especially because my son and I, we like, well, all my sons and I, we like to watch, movies like that, action and drama, but we love it when it's based off something that's real.
Hmm.
And and that starts our conversations, when we watch something, or when I read something. And I'll tell you, after every time I have an interview, and I get everything all set and ready to go, I go and tell my son about it. I'm like, oh, you'll never guess about this. And so I'm sharing your story, not just with whoever's going to listen when I, make this go live, but I'm sharing it with my children as well, because, when I read something, or even if they just roll their eyes, but, something like this, they would not, because of how we like the history. And I actually, my twin sons, they're 26 now, but I homeschooled them when they were in high school, because they weren't getting the attention they needed. And one is special needs. And um, when we studied history, we didn't just study world history, we studied local history. Since we live in upstate New York, the American Revolution was a big thing, uh, the Battle of Saratoga and things like that. So I I taught them that, and they read it in actual books, and they learned from it. And then when we went to the battlefield, or the military museum, I could see how they would say, "Oh, I remember that," or "I knew this." So it's, when when you pass on your story, you pass on something like this, and then later they realize, oh, I know that. I know that answer. I remember that I know this. Um, and the way you tell your grandfather's story, the way in your voice, in his voice, um, it makes people, I mean, to me, it made me want to, like, oh, I want to learn more about how a person can actually serve in more than one army, So, it opens that doors, but it may open doors for conversations that, maybe like the grandparents that don't want to share everything, but if somebody read it, they might say, Graham, do you know about this? Or, you were here, you said you were, and, have that conversation. I don't know if, or even with their parents, if their grandparents are no longer around, having that conversation as adult, even as a kid. I think this is something that everyone of, you know, anyone that can read should be able to read this story.
Yeah. You talked about just now facts, and you spoke about truth. So I just want to speak to that for a minute or two. So what I like to highlight, and what I did a lot in the book, and what I do in person with an audience, is there are things about World War II that you don't know.
Right.
It is very difficult to be a World War II historian. It's just too big.
Yeah.
You could spend a career just in one area of expertise, so knowing everything that happened in one country or with one battalion.
Right.
But to know everything is almost impossible. Just two quick facts. So people don't know that the Soviets gave up the most lives in World War II than any other country in the world. It's not knowledge that's well known. But the fact is, they surrendered 25 million of their treasured souls.
Yeah.
Of the 45 million, it's another number that isn't known, total chaos in World War II. So that's like one thing that people are shocked to hear. And my grandfather also narrated a whole bunch of numbers. There were this many people in this camp. I had this many family members. We winnowed down to these numbers. The hourglassing of survivors is horrifying, actually, when you have a pool of people and then at the end you have nothing.
Right.
Another fact that I like to speak about is shown in one movie ever that I've ever seen, and that is the fact that Russian soldiers the Russian army was running out of personnel and men. So they had this teamwork arrangement, like a buddy system. One soldier would have the weapon, and when that soldier went down, the buddy next to him without the weapon would simply pick up the weapon and carry on. Right? And this is shown in a movie called Enemy at the Gates, which I highly recommend for you to watch with your sons.
I am going to do that. I'm going to write that down.
Enemy at the Gates. It's an excellent movie. And first of all, before I proceed, good job on you for imparting this kind of thirst of knowledge in your sons. It's admirable, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And the truth, to speak about that for a minute. So everything in this book is the unvarnished and raw truth. I embellish nothing. And if I should ever get so lucky to sign a contract and sell out to have this be a Hollywood movie, I would very clearly state you do not have to create anything. There is enough drama in here to drive the whole story. You don't have to stick in a love interest. You don't have to stick in false drama. There's like 15 cliffhangers in here. You don't have to stick in anymore. The story is the story on its own and could stand on its own merits. Every word is true. I embellish nothing. There's a lot of historical fiction out there, and they sell well, and that's nice. And people imagine the kinds of conversations that their protagonists must have had. I did not fake any conversations. If there was dialogue, it's because my grandfather reported specific dialogue bits to me, and those are recorded in the book. So there's not much in dialogue going on. It's only what he reported to me. It's the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth. That's the story that I've put in the pages of the book.
And that's what sells it. I'm serious. I mean, when you don't, I mean, sometimes because I write nonfiction, historical, local history right now. I switched genres not that long ago, but I was, but it's a point where you want to tell the story the way it was without being like you're writing a textbook, and you don't want to, like you said, there's enough stuff in one war, in one little army or whatever, to fill 1,000 books or 100 movies or whatever. And your grandfather served in 4, and you tell his story and it comes alive. You're like right there, and then it makes you think too about how how does this happen? Like you said, you tell your audience, he served in 4 armies, and how does one do that? And that is what you're thinking when you're reading it, and then you're like, I don't know, it's something out of a movie, but it's real. It really happened to this man, this grandfather, and I have to actually go back and read the book again. So I have to pick that book up again and read it, because that you've reinvigorated me to read this book, and then I will share this with my sons as well. This is just amazing. And so just to spin just a little bit before we close off, you said that you have other books that you have written. What type of books are those?
So for some reason, for some strange and fascinating reason, most of the books that I've written 13 and 6, with the 7th coming up, which will be my 14th book. So half of my books will be parodies of the Passover Haggadah. So for readers who may not be familiar, the Haggadah is the text that accompanies the Passover meal. And it's a pamphlet. It's not really that thick. It was accumulated over hundreds of years, and the text was the same for a very long time. And what I did as a first venture was I converted the entire thing into emoji. So I'm the answer to a trivia question. I remain the only person in the world who has ever written a book entirely in emoji.
Oh wow! I gotta check those out too.
Yeah, and then I just went crazy from there. And then I put out the Passover, the Shakespeare Haggadah, and the Star Wars Haggadah, and the Dad Jokes Haggadah, and I can't seem to stop.
It's so great. I have to check them all out. I do.
Please, Martin Bodek Books. We can mention it again.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's what I find myself doing until other ideas start floating in. I'm always working on children's books. My wife always wants me to do those, so some of those are in the pipeline.
Oh, that's good. I just started writing children's books myself.
Excellent.
I had to grow, but
all right. And what might be familiar, which is also sells very well, Mark Twain wrote a book called Extracts from Adam's Diary. It was a retelling in a parody sense of the day-to-day trials and tribulations and foibles of the first human, according to the Bible. And I wrote a follow-up called Extracts from Noah's Diary.
Cool.
And it sells very well, and it's a fun one, and I made a good product there. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of the jokes and the nod to Mark Twain, who I hold in high esteem.
I agree. I like Mark Twain's work too.
So those are my other works, but this for the moment is my magnum opus, truly in every sense.
Well, I can see that. And you just your grandfather, your family have a legacy in that book.
Yeah,
And
absolutely, yeah. I wrote it. When I wrote this, I got closer with my mom because she was helping me out with the entire process. I grew closer with my cousins who were invested in giving me all the information that they knew about my grandfather. I have many of them. I have 44 first cousins. I'm blessed with a
wow,
gargantuan family, and they were streaming in with stories, and it helped really
that is
fill out the pages. It was fantastic to be back in touch with them. We live lives all over the place, but when a story needs to be told, there was a lot of good input. So I got closer. It was very cool.
That is really great. And I really want to thank you for being on the show, and you're welcome back at any time and sharing more stories about anything. Grandfather, you could talk about more stories. So thank you for being on the show, and thank you, audience, for listening. If you wish to be a guest on the show, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Don't forget, if you wish to comment on this show or any show, comments are available, and yes, I will read them. Please follow this podcast on Spotify. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind. Thank you for watching this video podcast. Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast is a takeoff of Amy's Bookshelf Reviews website, and which does reviews and also author promotions. You can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com for more information. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe, follow, and keep listening. Thank you.